So it's easy, at least it's easier for me to see how to apply this to my personal life, Brian. So for our practical application today, how do we apply this to business?
We're in our series about villains, and we're looking at sort of their failure modes. And we've talked a lot about these, the different villains over the course of these last couple episodes, and what Silva sort of doesn't see. But the thing for me that talking about it that comes back to this movie is really about the mentor, the role of the mentor, right? And that all of this is kind of goes back to M's character and how she approaches like mission above everything, and she's very explicit about it. She's, you get the sense that she's kind of sentimental underneath of all the things, but she's very British about not showing it. But
Can I just tell you that the time that we get to see that the most in this movie is definitely when when she says take the shot, and then there's no, like, you can just see the back of her, but she's in front of this big window and the rain just starts to pour against the window. You don't see her
yes,
crying or anything like that, but it's again brilliant cinematography to display the like feelings that she has in that moment.
yeah, yeah. Somehow you know what Judi Dench is thinking, even when she's completely stone faced. Like she does an amazing job with this, right? But if you think about, if you're going to be the leader who will ask your people to make sacrifices, who's going to have to make the hard decisions, who is potentially going to put people in harm's way or potentially screw up and do things that don't work, right? If you're going to be that leader and you want people to follow you, you have to be mission forward, right? If they believe you're doing it because it's for you, if they believe you're doing it because you're selfish or scared or looking for your, interested in your own power or career, like they're not going to tolerate it. They're not going to follow you. They're not going to be inspired by you. And they're not going to sacrifice themselves for your mission. The only way that that works, the only way you can ask people to jump through those kind of hoops is if they see you self-sacrificing, if they see you explicit about the mission and who you're benefiting and why. And if you can do that, if you can get to that point as a leader, then they'd be like, oh, sure, yeah, I will. I'm on board. I will face the drama with you. I will work extra hard. I will take on personal pain. And so you can't. Not everybody will see that, right? Some of them are going to be Silva and will assume you're being selfish, or they're so into themselves that they can't that they can't see it. But the only way to potentially inspire people to be James Bonds, to take those risks, is to have the figure that cares for them as much as possible, but also cares for the mission more. And that's, I think, if you've had that person in your life, if you've had that mentor in your career, if you've had a leader in your career who maybe, no matter how close you were to them, who you were very clear on the principles and motivations behind their decision making, then it's a lot easier to comprehend, the sacrifices you have to make.
Maybe I can expand upon that a little bit. In addition to that, I love everything that you're saying about the mentor. We talked about it last episode about how to avoid creating Riddler like villains. And it really comes down to mentoring and showing compassion on people, because we all are going to go through moments that could make us, that could take our destiny a certain direction. Now, how do we think about that from an organization perspective? And we talk a lot about the system that is MI6, because in your business, you might not have a character played by Javier Bardem who's just hell bent on tearing the system apart or something like that. But what you probably do have is, in one way, shape, or form, a system that isn't necessarily performing to the goal that the organization wants it to. If you notice that you're not getting exactly where you want to go, I've seen this before. This system has people have started to confuse the mission and the system, where it's like, well, no, we just have to accomplish this. We just have to follow through on this process. And if we just keep doing it, then mission? It's like, no, you're letting the system override the mission. At some point in that moment, we have to stop and evaluate. Wait a second. Are we actually serving our customers by doing this thing, or are we just following a process at this point?
And we see in this movie we see MI6 falling into that, right? That there's clearly everybody's sort of gotten distracted by the technology and the process and the shiny objects and the political infighting. And they don't spend as much time as they should talking about mission, talking about who they're benefiting and how. We certainly see them falling into that. And that's as much as M talks about mission, I think connecting that to ground level actions, it's easy to, if you're not down on the ground level yourself ever, it's easy to lose track of that, right? It's easy to assume that everybody's kind of, assume that things are going better than they are at the interface with the customer, at the interface with the product, at the interface with the factory line, or anything else that your organization is managing.
Yeah, for me, I have to reflect on the mission often, reflect on the vision of the organization. Is that what we're currently doing? Does it look like that when we work every day? Is that how we're collaborating? Is that how we're delivering value to the customer? And if it's not, then the system's not good enough. The system is not meant to exist in a stable state forever. The system is meant to evolve. That's the only way that it's going to be able to perpetually delight the customer, create value for the people who are working there, create satisfaction, and of course also stay ahead of the competition. It has to evolve.
And that goes back to our earlier conversation about agency, right? Is like the system itself is not going to naturally adapt to changing circumstances. It's individual people in the system need to be empowered to make the changes, need to be empowered
Hmm.
to sense what's going on. We have this balance of different personality types that are needed when they're working well together. When you have M broadcasting principles and Q developing technology and James Bond executing stuff on the ground, and they're all kind of on the same page, and trusting each other and listening to each other, then things are going well. And when they are not trusting each other, when they don't quite get where the other person's coming from, when they aren't collaborating, then you get everybody just sort of defaults to like, well, I'm going to do the thing that the system says I should do, or I'm going to do my own agenda. And that's where we have the kind of the cracks in the system here.
Yeah. Oh man. Once again, getting back to modeling of systems and how do we not overturn again, because we're not trying to be like Silva, but shock the system because we are trying to be like Bond in our own lives. How do we know where to make changes to the system? Because, if you're the one who's noticing that things need to change in the system, then you're the one to make those changes. And that's I think the revelation that Bond has maybe 2/3 of the way through this movie. That I think it's honestly after he hears the rat analogy and then he sees it play out once more. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I am the rat. Okay, well, what can I do differently? Because I don't have to adhere to the system. He thinks I do.
Right, right. He's just, you get tired of playing somebody else's game.